Hi, I'm Mark Fletcher. I'm Vice President of Public Safety Solutions at 911 Inform and also a board member on the Denise Amber Lee Foundation. Today I'll be presenting our next episode in our Wednesday webinar series entitled Understanding the MLTS 911 Dilemma from Direct Access to Dispatchable Location. Let's start off with the current legislative status. The first set of rules in play are the Carries Law Act of 2017. That simply states that any multi-line telephone system installed or upgraded after February of 2018 needs to be able to direct dial 911 on all phones. Additionally, they also need to provide on-site notification, providing information to on-site staff that a 911 call was placed from a device and what specific device that was. Additional rules were added regarding a dispatchable location under Raybaum's Act Section 506. First, the language was expanded to include all wired devices on property, all wireless sets located on property, with wireless meaning Wi-Fi, not cellular, and the applicability of remote workers located off property. The system needed to provide a callback to either the facility or the device that placed the call, and a dispatchable location must be provided both to the ECC PSAP as well as to the local on-site notification. Now, the important part is that these MLTS rules have now been codified under the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations under Title 47, Part 9, Subpart F, Section 9.15. The relevance of this is the applicability of non-compliance penalties. While no specific penalties are called off in this section, all violations in the UFCFR carry a default penalty of $10,000 plus $500 per day per occurrence for non-compliance of any regulation unless specifically defined. So why is this relevant to ECCs and PSAPs? You're not lawyers and you don't enforce federal laws. So what's up? Well, a non-compliant MLTS in your jurisdiction places your citizens at risk, whether they're part of schools, businesses, or even hospitals. Providing an accurate dispatchable location will actually speed your response. And a correctly administered MLTS will minimize the misdials to your ECC, reducing those false call volumes. And finally, an intelligent MLTS is able to deliver situational awareness that you need with the call to dispatch proper resources more efficiently. Now, receiving this information will be embedded in Next Generation 911, but an over-the-top architecture can deliver this same data today ahead of your Next Gen 911 ECC PSAP deployment. And that's done using technology like RapidSOS Jurisdiction View and Portal. Now let's take a minute to understand the reason behind dialing 9 for an outside line. It all comes back to something that's called a dial plan, or a functional decision tree, how the telephone system treats dialed numbers. Multi-line telephone systems allow each individual within a business to have a phone on their desk. Now, since everyone is not on the phone at the same time, outside trunks are grouped together and shared in what's called a line pool. Now, in order for the system to understand that you're calling Bob at extension 1973, or you're calling me at 1973-826-9111 on my cell phone, users will typically dial a 9 as an access code. That simply tells the system that the following digits are an external number, and only those additional numbers should be sent to the public switch telephone network. So you can see the problem. Just dialing 911 would grab an outside line and just send the digits 11 to the carrier. That's going to be a bad number.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, 039P.
Now, in modern systems, the 9 is not important anymore, or at least it doesn't have to be. Plus, forced 10-digit dialing locally and intelligent MLTS systems all now have workarounds to this issue. Now that we understand a little bit about dial plan logic, let's take a look at how we can apply that logic for a little bit of 911 misdial prevention. Why do people misdial 911 from PBX systems? Well, there are some pretty simple common explanations that explain why this happens. One that's very common, and I've done myself, I'll go to make a phone call, I'll dial 9-1 and then look back for the number. And then I'll dial 1-973-555-1212. What the system sees is 911-973-555-1212 because I repeated the 1. And it sends that call to 911. The public switch telephone network ignores all the extraneous digits, and the caller ends up with,
"We're sorry, your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please check the number and dial again, or call your operator to help you."
Another very common scenario is the user fat fingers or bounces the number 1 when they're making a phone call. And again, the system sees 911 plus a telephone number, sending the call to 911, where the user's going to hear,
"911, what's your emergency?"
And another very common problem is that the user dials internationally, but forgets to dial the 011 and just dials 11 and the country code and number. So the system sees 911-4423-987, etc. when you're trying to call London. Once again, 911 is sent to the local carrier and the caller hears,
"911, what's your emergency?"
Now in every one of these cases, the caller is struck with panic as soon as that dispatcher comes on the line, and they quickly hang up. Depending on the caller ID, you're lucky if you trace it to the business, you're very lucky if you trace it to the station, and if you call back, what you'll typically get is no one answering the phone, because they know what they just did, or Emmy Award-winning acting. "No, I didn't make a 911 call. I don't know what could have happened." But in every one of these cases, we've got the digits 911 followed by additional digits, creating the misdialed call. Now, some MLTS actually have a misdial feature that can be turned on or activated, or those that don't can typically simulate that function in programming. And the logic goes something like this. The system has collected digits on an outbound phone call. The first thing to look for are these digits 911. If they're not, collect more digits and ring the internal extension number. But if they are 911, the next step in the logic is to examine for additional digits. Remember we said any misdial call event is going to be the digits 911 followed by additional digits. So if those additional digits are there, it's likely a misdialed 911 call. And we route that call to internal staff to where they can interrogate the user if they just didn't know how to dial the phone or if they have an emergency. But if there are no additional digits, then we've got a valid 911 call, we select an outside line, and we send the digits to the carrier. This will eliminate just about every single environment of a 911 misdialed event out of a multi-line telephone system. And I haven't found a system today where this is not a feature that's turned on with a simple bit of programming in the system, or the functionality laid out here can't be built in the dial plan routing logic. These are all standard decision points that systems already have in place to deal with long-distance dialing and other capabilities. But even though this may seem very logical, my advice to public safety folks is that unless you know that system and specific release intimately, and you're certified on its programming, you're best to not troubleshoot and just refer them to their telephone vendor, who can then best advise them on the proper steps to take in their environment. Let's talk about the term dispatchable location and what it is. The term dispatchable location, or DL, has recently been added to our ever-expanding vocabulary as it was introduced under Section 506 of the Ray-Bombs Act, and the FCC has adopted rules to ensure that dispatchable location is now conveyed with 911 calls to dispatch centers regardless of the technological platform used, including 911 calls from MLTS. Now, what it means is a little bit fuzzy. A dispatchable location means a location that's delivered to the PSAP with a 911 call that consists of a validated street address of the calling party, plus additional information, and here are two important words, such as a suite, an apartment, or similar information necessary to adequately identify the location of the calling party. And that's under the Title 47 CFR, Section 9.3. Now, the reason I bring this up is because while we want to provide the most accurate information that we have, we don't want to over-rotate and be so accurate that even if it changes slightly, the information becomes useless. So the trick is to find that happy medium where we're providing explicit data, but also the appropriate references that make that data usable. And this is where I get into location reporting granularity. What exactly do you need? There were several different laws in various different states that called off square footage, and they still do, but are those square footages logical? Do they line up with a response zone in the building? Do they take into consideration other factors, such as hazmat storage, employee counts, or other data points that are relevant. At the end of the day, each building is like a snowflake. I don't think you're going to find two that are identical. So instead of this being a problem, it's actually a perfect time to engage and educate your public business community and let them know how your center operates, and come up with a manner where both of you can intertwine with each other to deliver data that's relevant, usable, and affordable to create and maintain. I've seen agencies train their community relations officer or their DARE officer to have these discussions as they already go around to schools. And what a great topic for a business luncheon event for your agency. Now, I'm not knocking very granular information, but what I'm saying is Cubicle 2C-231 is not really a reference to a dispatchable location without a current floor plan in my hand to reference. And that's why my application focuses on that floor plan and making it interactive and real-time instead of a static sheet that was updated months ago. Now, when many people see this new digital high-tech interface, they immediately think technology that costs a fortune. Well, having the right conversation usually unveils the fact that technology uplifts are often not required, especially with the more modern MLTS solutions. Many can provide compliance with both Kerry's Law and the Ray-Bombs Act, and that can be achieved with a simple discussion and understanding of the requirements. Now, that's not to say that more complex environments with multiple work-at-home individuals and dynamic mobility isn't going to be a complex environment that needs a little bit more. But engineered the right way, next-generation solutions are actually more efficient and overall more affordable, and they're becoming more widely available from more vendors, including 911 Inform. Let's talk about 911 ECC PSAP discrepancy reporting. For when your dog Allie has chewed his homework and you end up with a big fat no record found. Or it says 457 Northwest Boulevard when it should have said 457 Northwest Boulevard. There's a subtle difference there that makes a big deal. So do you know what discrepancy reports are at your agency? Do you know what errors to look for on that discrepancy report? Do you know what to report? And do you even know who to report it to? Well, if you answered no to a lot of those questions, don't be ashamed. As it turns out, a good chunk of dispatchers don't know about this, but it's an excellent program and mechanism to initiate a compliance outreach program for enterprises. Now, I'll give you this warning, your actual mileage may vary. Depending on where your agency is located, reporting will likely be very different from state to state, and maybe even from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. You need to determine where, you need to determine how, and you need to determine how to follow up. Now, a lot of the discrepancy report information was provided as a courtesy by Tracy Eldridge, ENP, and CEO of On Scene First. In addition to providing PSAP training on discrepancy reports, she's also published some free online on-demand webinars. If what I'm about to show you is going to pique your interest, you definitely should check it out. As it turns out today, many call-taking solutions installed at PSAPs have a discrepancy report function that's built directly into the application interface. And if you don't see it in yours, it might be a feature that's just not turned on. Or if it's just not available, printed forms can be used, and there are plenty of common resources, or you can make your own. They're really quite simple, and they just document the error. Now let's look at some situations of where a discrepancy report should be filled out to isolate problems and get them fixed. If you've got bad Annie, fill out a discrepancy report. If the alley is in error, fill out a discrepancy report. If it's incomplete alley, meaning no dispatchable location was provided, remember, that's now the law, fill out a discrepancy report. Or of course, if you have a true misrouted call, you're getting a transfer from another agency, calls from Northern 911 or Intrado, two of the popular emergency call routing centers, or as I said, calls into your agency that have come from elsewhere. Now, you do need to do a little bit of investigative work. You need to determine the general reason or what data is wrong, and you need to determine where that report's going to be filed so whomever can correct the issue. But above all, it needs to be reported. And again, if your agency needs help with that, Tracy Eldridge at On Scene First is well-versed in discrepancy reports, what they should look like, and how those policies should be implemented in your center. In fact, as I mentioned, Tracy, Hank Hunt, and myself provided a free webinar on discrepancy reporting, which is available directly from Tracy at onscenefirst.com. onscenefirst.com. And if you need any of that information clarified, reach out to her at teldridge@onscenefirst.com. So with that, we'll wrap up today. Thanks for attending this Webinar Wednesday, sponsored by Rapid SOS and presented by the Denise Amber Lee Foundation. I'm Mark Fletcher, ENP, and I'm Vice President of Public Safety Solutions at 911 Inform and a proud board member of the Denise Amber Lee Foundation. Thank you all for attending today, and above all, thank you, 911.